Hi, everybody. It's Carrie Donegan, and welcome to Radical Age Reversal. Sorry about that. I had a message that I had to send, but I am back and I am excited to be with you. We are in the book Eat to Beat Your Diet. I hope you're enjoying this. I certainly am. And today we're going to talk about three really important things. And I've tried to encapsulate it in a way that you can remember it, because I think this is a really important thing for you to be able to remember, incorporate, and take forward in your health journey, in your longevity plan. I don't want you to get all of these nuggets confused. I want you to be able to concretize some of them. And this one is really important. And so I want you to remember that leaders act right. Okay, that makes sense, right? We just had a presidential election in the United States. And I think when people are looking at leaders, they want them to act right. So let's remember that leaders act right. Okay, so what that does that have to do with fat? Well, it's a way that I'm actually using to summarize a chapter by Dr. Lee that starts on page 42 if you have the book, and it's called Fat is an Endocrine Organ. So I want you to go ahead and note that page. And then we are going to cover everything that goes through to page 47. Okay, so we're in 42 to 47 today. And our topic is, where does fat lead you if leaders act right? Okay, and what does leadership and fat have to do with each other? So let's just go over a couple of things. When we hear the word fat, we think of three things primarily. We think of the food, fat, right? And some people have a negative connotation with fat. Some people have a positive connotation with fats. Fats are good, actually. We should be eating healthy fats. Of course, there are bad fats like seed oils that we have to avoid. And then there is the fat that is the organ of our body. Okay, fat is an organ. It's actually the largest endocrine organ of your body. So that's the largest hormone producing organ of your body. Um, and that is a really important thing to keep in mind, that hormone producing factory has to run smoothly. So getting rid of all of your fat is not the goal. Remember, we talked about the Goldilocks plan last week, that there is a perfect amount of fat, right? We don't want to look like we have a puffer jacket on, but we don't want that really thin, high tech insulated material that we wear under our clothing to stay nice and slim, right? So it's somewhere in between that. I think we're looking for something more like a cashmere sweater, if I'm going to put it in terms that appeal to me. Hopefully that sounds good to you, right? So not a big puffer jacket, not that thin, high-tech fabric that we use to insulate ourselves in the winter. But more like a cashmere sweater, something that's thin, close to the body, warm and cozy, and does the job. All right. So, what is the job that fat does? What is that leadership role that we're looking for our fat to take on? Okay. So, here we go. There are three things that you're going to remember today. Okay. And they go with leaders act right. They are leptin, adiponectin, and resistin. And if you don't remember those words, it doesn't matter, because the most important thing that you need to know is, what do they do? So if your cashmere sweater, right, if your fat is a factory, and part of the things that it produces, now there are hundreds of hormones that your fat produces, believe it or not, which is why sometimes when people are super thin, their hormone production and they're low, right? So they come into a danger zone. The other thing is, sometimes when people are overweight or obese, their hormones are not working right. You hear this all the time because the factory isn't working properly. So here's what I want you to think about. If you are in that extremely thin category where you're not producing your hormones properly, that means you have no leaders. They're either retired or they're missing, right? So you've actually wiped out all the leadership in your body. If you are overweight or obese, you have too many leaders, right? There's like too much going on. Dr. Lee describes this in his book as being chaotic, right? That when there's so much fat on the body, chaos ensues. And so just think of too many cooks in the kitchen, right? Like too many leaders, too many people making decisions too much contradiction, too much inflammation, right? Too much fighting, too much arguing. We know the inflammatory response is something that we get from being overweight or obese. So, which can manifest itself in pain and swelling, but also inflammation that we don't see and we don't feel. So that's really important. We want the Goldilocks effect. We want to stay kind of in the middle. We want to stay with that cashmere sweater, right? That's actually just one leader doing its job and doing it well. So leaders act right. Leptin, adiponectin, resistin. And there are lots of organs that are affected by our hormones produced by fat, but we don't have time to talk about all of them. I want you to think of three things today when we talk about our three hormones produced by our fat, which is an organ. Okay. Number one, I want you to think about hormones that regulate your metabolism. I think that's the obvious one when it comes to leptin, adiponectin, and resistin. But I also want you to think about your cardiovascular system and how very, very important it is for proper weight, proper fat amount to be on your body, because it's going to affect your longevity and it's going to affect your cardiovascular system. So that's the other thing. So we're going to focus again on metabolism, right? How much weight you gain, how much weight you lose. That's actually metabolic rate, but a lot of people call it metabolism, so I'm going with that. Number two, our cardiovascular system, our heart health, what that looks like. And then number three, we're going to talk about immunity and staying away from illness. Okay, so just those three things today and just those three hormones today. And I think that's going to be more than enough. And if you can remember, leaders act right, you're going to be able to take this information and constantly apply it in your daily life. Now, one of the categories that I want you to be aware of is that your body is in a constant state of war. It's battling things all the time. And it is actually designed to be a really great warrior. So I don't want you to worry about being in a battle, and I don't want you to try to control your environment so much so that you're focused on the environment instead of focusing on your own health. Okay. If we are strong and we have our army and we're focused on a good offensive, we really don't have to play. If we're focused on a good offense defense combination, right? So it's not just one or the other. We don't have to worry about resetting the playing field, right? We don't have to kind of hyper clean necessarily. We don't have to get rid of our chemicals. We don't have to add chemicals into the environment. We want to get rid of them if possible. So the environment may not be able to change, but we can change what we do. And that will change the consequences that we experience. So one of the things to keep in mind is that our choices are our choices, but the consequences are the consequences. So we can't control the consequences. We can only control our choices. So our choices are really, really important. And to make a good choice, we have to understand the consequences, which is why we're learning about leaders act right, right? The leptin, the adiponectin, and the resistin. Okay, so let's talk about leptin. Leptin is like the coach that has the whistle. Okay, so this is like in the army. This leader is going to be the one that's going to be out there saying, go, stop, go, stop. And in terms of metabolism, we're talking about hunger. Okay, so it just stands to reason that number one, it's impossible for the human being, except for in a modern world, to be eating all the time, right? We used to have to hunt or gather our food. We had to prepare it. We had to store it. Sometimes there were times of plenty, and sometimes there were times of famine. And so your body is built for that. It's not built for constant abundance. It's not built to live like in a grocery store or in a restaurant or even in your kitchen by your refrigerator where you can constantly eat and eat and eat. There has to be something that makes life okay when you're not eating, right? So how does that work? It works through something called leptin. Now, what leptin does, again, picture a coach or a referee with a whistle, right? It's going to say go, and then he's going to say stop. Okay, so that's what happens. We have glucose in our blood, and we're going to talk about more about glucose in your blood when it comes to adiponectin. But just for right now, we have glucose in our blood. When that glucose drops, your body has two choices. All right. Number one, it can turn on leptin and tell you, go get yourself some food. You're hungry. You don't have enough glucose in your bloodstream. Or it can switch mechanisms from taking glucose, which is readily available in the bloodstream, and using that for fuel, and going to the fat stores and taking the fat out of the fat stores and changing that into glucose that can then be used for fuel. Okay, this is where weight loss becomes really, really tricky because the pattern of leptin signaling, that on and off, on and off, am I hungry? Am I not hungry? Am I hungry? Am I not hungry? That happens through a pattern. You can train your body, and this is why fasting works. You can train your body to be hungry at certain times of the day and not to be hungry at other times of the day. And that's when it's like your body is a well oiled machine. It's working really beautifully. So, like, if you decide that you're going to delay your first meal and you're going to eat somewhere between 10, 11, 12, 1, something in the afternoon, but you used to eat breakfast. At the beginning, you're going to be hungry in the morning because your body has a pattern, and that body is going to release leptin. It's going to turn off leptin, and it's going to say, oh, I think we're hungry. We need some food. But if you power through it, okay, then, and you don't get the food, what it says to your fat is, we're hunting for food and we can't find it. So you better go into those fat stores and take that energy, convert it to glucose, put it in the bloodstream, and send it out to the cells so that we can stay alive. Now, in that process, in that in between, you're going to feel uncomfortable. And that's what happens to people. And that's where diets fail. Okay. New Year's resolutions, you might be out there saying, yeah, I'm going to lose weight or I'm going to get into shape. A lot of people are doing that right now. This is going to be the moment. This is going to be that thing that you're going to watch out for. Okay. Is that moment where you go, oh, I'm hungry. I want something to eat. Can you power through that moment? And if you understand what your body's doing, I think it's easier. If you understand that your body is now turning off leptin. Okay. So if you are hungry, your body has no leptin. And so I think, actually, if we're talking about mind over matter, you can actually signal to leptin that you need to be turned on. Okay. Turn on that leptin so I feel satiated, so that I don't feel hungry, so that I can go off and do something else, please. Okay. I don't want to eat. I'm on a diet, trying to get into shape. I'm trying to do my best to live my greatest life. Come on, leptin, do your job. All right. And when it wakes up, right, or when it goes, oh, okay, I'm supposed to turn on. All right, leptin, we are not hungry. We are satiated. We are fine. You can get through those hours and then eat. And guess what? Your diet is going to work, because guess what you did in those moments when you didn't eat? Your body pulled from its fat stores, which means you started to burn calories that you don't want, right? That fat, you started to shrink your fat, which is pretty cool. Now, here's a tool that you can use when it comes to leptin signaling. If you are feeling hungry, don't want to eat, you want to burn fat, then the thing you're going to get is your MetaPower. And here's why. Studies have shown that the oils of MetaPower, things like lemon, ginger, grapefruit, especially grapefruit's number one when it comes to the whole Leaders Act Right protocol, because every study I looked up when it came to leptin, adiponectin, and resistin, guess what? Number one oil, grapefruit. Okay, and it comes in every possible study as one of the top oils for this. So you can buy this in a capsule if you want, or if you prefer the oil or you want to save a little bit of money, you can make your own. So I'm going to show you how you make your own MetaPower capsule. Again, this is something you can actually do when you feel hungry, but you don't want to eat. You're just going to take 4 drops, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're going to put it in a capsule and you are going to swallow it. And I have a glass of water over here, so I'll be right back. Oops. There we go. Okay. Cheers. Done. So now that essential oil is going to go into my body and it's going to signal leptin to turn on. And that's what I want. And in about 20 minutes, faster, if it works faster in your body, you should feel much less hungry. If in 20 minutes you don't, guess what? You can actually go and take another capsule. Okay. So there's lots of things that you can do. You don't have to sit around and suffer when you're trying to retrain your body. So that's leptin, that's the leader. Okay. Act is adiponectin. Adiponectin is another hormone. It's actually the most prevalent hormone in your bloodstream. Who knew? And what it does is it regulates your metabolism. So it's the primary fat hormone that shapes your metabolism. Its job is to make sure things run smoothly in the fuel uptake department. Adiponectin is so important for healthy metabolism that this hormone is found in your bloodstream at levels 1,000 times higher than any other hormone in the body. I just wanted to read that because I wanted you to really, really like just get that in your mind that, okay, in my bloodstream, I have a lot of adiponectin and it is deciding whether I'm going to store fat or I'm not going to store fat. And so this is a really important thing to be working properly, because if it's not working, these are the army, these are the soldiers, okay, the actors in your body. They're making a lot of decisions. They're being directed by the leader, which is leptin, but they're making a lot of decisions when it comes to whether or not you're going to gain fat or lose fat. So adiponectin is super, super important. This is also what they test for when they talk about blood glucose levels. Okay. So if you get your fasting blood sugar tested, the doctor is going to look for how much of that adiponectin is in your bloodstream, how much sugar is left when you've slept all night and you haven't eaten. Okay. So all of that is really important. Okay. It also controls the effects of insulin. So we know that insulin is made in the pancreas. It responds to a couple of things. It responds to stress. So insulin goes up when you have like a lot of cortisol, when you have a lot of stress, right? So it gives you on high alert. It's there because it really, really wants to keep you from spending too much energy at a difficult moment, because they know that if you're in danger, you probably are going to need a lot of energy. So it slows things down. And this is a problem because when we're just like stressed out over work or school or not sleeping or went to too many parties or ate too many sugary foods or whatever caused the insulin to rise, it just means that we're going to get fat. It doesn't mean that we are going to be saved from our stress. It doesn't mean it's really going to help us from our stress, just because of the way the modern world works. Remember, it's an ancient body working in a modern world. And so we have to work in ancient ways if we want our bodies to perform the way they were designed. The modern world is actually working against us because it's making everything too easy in a way. It's making things artificial and confusing, if you will, for your body. So it doesn't really know how to act. We have to put it in the proper environment. Okay. So what happens if you have too much insulin? If you have too much insulin, you can then it's just like it's not there doing what it needs to do to balance your blood sugar. Okay. And so you kind of forget about it. You become insulin resistant, and then blood sugar just keeps just like flowing out, flowing around. And we know that's not good for your arteries. That's not good for your heart. Okay. And as you age, if your adiponectin isn't working right, you get a floppy heart. I never heard this before, but it's kind of scary and weird at the same time. Your heart muscle starts to kind of become a little bit amorphous. It becomes smooth and soft and floppy, they call it. And you don't want that. You want like a nice, strong heart muscle, right? That's what's going to be able to keep your body strong. But if you get this weird, floppy heart, then what happens is you end up with cardiovascular problems later in life, which is why for so many years, cardiovascular disease was the number one killer of Americans. We know that's actually changed. Metabolic disorders are now the number one killers of Americans, which is why this podcast is so important to me to share with you, because if you have this information, then you can get out of that metabolic syndrome group and you can start living your best life. So, adiponectin controls the effects of insulin, the metabolic hormone made by your pancreas. Whenever you eat food, your pancreas releases more insulin. Insulin's job in your body is to help your cells absorb blood glucose and store the energy. Adiponectin makes your cells more responsive to insulin, which is what we want. So blood glucose can be taken up more quickly and efficiently. This is called insulin sensitivity, and it is crucial for maintaining healthy metabolism. When your cells lose the responsiveness to insulin, your blood glucose levels begin to rise to abnormally high levels because your cells can't suck up the fuel. This is a major problem because without insulin or proper insulin sensitivity, your muscles weaken, your brain becomes sluggish, your organs swiftly falter due to lack of energy. And all these symptoms herald the beginning of metabolic syndrome and the foretelling of the dreaded diabetes. All right, so now we know why that army of adiponectin, that prevalent hormone in our bloodstream, is so crucially important. And remember, when there's too much fat, it's chaotic. And when there's not enough fat, it's too weak. All right, so we need that cashmere sweater to make us happy and healthy. All right, next, let's talk about the right. Remember, leaders act right. So, what's right? What are they doing? It's called resistin. So, resistin is the third major hormone produced by your fat. And this helps to fine tune the effects of adiponectin and counter some of the effects that you may not want, like the inflammatory response. Okay. So, it recruits stem cells to do repairs. It says to the army, okay, you can take a break, back off. It's the thing that's going to kind of look at the situation after the battle has been waged, right? And it kind of goes in and it tidies everything up. It becomes the repair mechanism, it becomes the proper regulatory mechanism. It's really, really cool. And it makes your health defenses a lot stronger. So just imagine it goes in and it kind of, it just tells the adiponectin like how to act, right? So it's the guide. It kind of looks over what it needs to fix after a battle, as I said before, right? Like, so do uniforms need to be repaired? Does ammunition need to be reloaded, right? Do wounds need to be healed? Like, what was the damage caused by this war that you raged in your body? Which, metabolism is like a war. Interestingly enough, we're always kind of battling something, whether it's disease, whether it's producing energy, whether it's producing new muscles, whether it's producing new brain cells. In a way, we're in a major battle. And so that's the interesting thing that we see when it comes to fat. So that fat sets the stage for all of this to be possible. So remember, it's not good if you don't have enough, because then your leadership is weak. If you have too much, your leadership is chaotic. But if you have just enough, your leadership is going to be strong. And what does it do? It acts right. It takes that adiponectin, it gives it its job. It allows it to do what it needs to do to give you energy and strength to make your cardiovascular system strong. And then the resistance comes in at the end, makes it right, ties up all the loose ends, and keeps your cardiovascular system healthy by repairing it if necessary, strong, so those muscles are building properly and staying in not so floppy. We don't need floppy hearts. We don't need to have clogged arteries, all of those things. It keeps all that from happening, and it keeps inflammation at the right level. Okay. And I think that is really, really important for us to remember, which is why I hope that Leaders Act Right will be something that you can remember, even if you don't remember, like, what do they stand? What are those words? Leptin, adiponectin, resistant? That doesn't really matter. It just means that I have leaders in my body. They're doing their job. They're saying when to eat, when not to eat, how much to eat, when to stop eating. And then I have the action of my body that's doing what I need to get my brain, my organs, my heart, everything working properly. And then I have this thing at the end that's called right. It makes it all right. It repairs things, it regulates things, it does things in my body that's just going to make it perfectly working, right? You want a perfectly working machine. So without that, we don't have our leaders acting right. And that's going to be something really important when it comes to longevity health, which is the purpose of this podcast. So here's to breaking the limits of age and living each day with vitality. Keep thriving. And I'll see you again in the next episode of Radical Age Reversal, where we will continue to read Dr. Lee's book together. Thank you.